Hey, good morning, girl. How are you doing? Oh boy, today is the 7th of February 2019, and I'm glad to be here. One of the ideas that have been on my mind lately is this idea that enough is enough, in the sense that I have enough. In fact, I have an abundance of things, and I think that too often we get caught up in lack and a sense of lack. And I am really feeling abundant lately. The last few days, I've just been like, wow, there's just so much amazingness going on. You know, one thing I'm realizing is that human beings have a tendency to, in the midst of abundance, focus on what's wrong, focus on the problem. I mean, I just think about human beings and the kind of lives we lead right now, and they are miraculous. I mean, every moment is like huge benefit and discovery and amazingness. I mean, it's powerful from all angles. So many things are going well right now, and the political conversation is just so negative and disparaging and limiting, and so it's such an interesting contrast. And it's true on a personal level too. It's not just on a political level, but on a personal level. I have friends who live amazing lives. They have plenty of money, they're healthy, they're beautiful, they have wonderful clothes, they have family. And yet all they can do is think about what's wrong in their lives. And when I inquire about what's wrong, um, I discover that they are mistaken quite often, that they're overgeneralizing, that there are inaccurate statements, and they're exaggerating what's wrong, and it's continual. And it's upsetting them and their people around them, and they're just falling into this despair when all I can see is just amazing miracles happening around them all the time, and they don't see it. Or maybe they do, and I'm sort of convinced that they may have even dismissed the amazing things that are going on in their world. It's really easy for human beings uh, to take for granted the good in our lives. I mean, just think about where we are as human beings right now on this planet. The project of civilization has been going on for about 3.5 billion years, right? Our bodies and minds have developed over the millennia, over eons in time, and over those eons, human beings have constructed language and culture. And today we stand at the peak of all of our discoveries in the world. We stand at the peak of our power, where as human beings, as a culture, as a population, we are changing our planet, right? We, through greenhouse emissions and climate change. And then we also are learning how capable we are about rectifying the problems of our planet too, and how it's within our grasp, right? It's in our reach to change our planet. We are more powerful than we've ever been before. And yet it's kind of funny. Things have never been better than they are today. And people still find things to complain about. And for the most part, they're made up, or they are quite trivial. Just think about, on the national scale, people talk about illegal immigration and how it's a big problem. Well, you know, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing the big problem. Same is true with like I remember like gay marriage, and that was like this big problem. Like, oh no, the gay marriage problem. What's the problem? People are loving each other, and they're marrying each other, and they're sharing their joy with one another. It's got to stop. What? What? It's pretty funny. It gives me. I think here's a metaphor or an illustration, I should say. I'm imagining a farmer who's an apple farmer, and he's got a gangbuster crop of apples this season. He's just his best crop of apples that he's ever produced, but his focus is on, oh, look at this apple, it's got a worm in it. What if all my apples had worms? And look at the ground. This little patch of ground here, well, that's really dry. Oh, could that mean something? A drought is coming? Oh, look at this apple. This apple's been bruised. Look at its bruises. We need to figure out what get to the bottom of these bruised apples. All of this in the midst of a farmer's bumper crop of apples. The farmer's making more money than he's ever made before on trade. And his life is set, right? For the future, for the next 20, 30, 40 years, him and his children and his grandchildren will be thriving because of the abundance and investment that he's gained in his apple harvest. But yet, this man is upset. Okay. He's continuously upset about fears of drought and famine and problems. This is basically the state of the world we're in right now. And I mean, pretty much everywhere in the world, human beings now, we have access to all the knowledge that has ever been produced, ever, through books, electronic books, libraries, videos, films, documentaries. All the knowledge that has ever been produced, ever. We have access to all the music that has ever been produced, ever. All the various rhythms and beats and dancing and enjoyment that has ever been produced, ever. The economies of the world are the best they've ever been. Ever. We've got financial security like we've never had before, ever. Wealth that has never even existed on the planet, ever. We have medical discoveries, right, about maintaining health. We have like robots doing surgeries. I'm serious. We're creating our own organs through 3D printing. I know, it's amazing. We're probing the brain through brain surgery, and we have more cures to diseases than we've ever had before, ever. Miracle treatments, laser eye surgery, artificial intelligence diagnosis from robots that can discover cancer, say, in blood samples. We've never ever been as powerfully medically. Antibiotics, we have the most powerful antibiotics that we've ever had to cure any disease at any time. We have vaccines, more vaccines than we've ever had. The cure that prevent disease before people get them. And there's so much negativity out on the airwaves and in people's conversations. It's mind-boggling. I'm serious. Mathematics, science. We know more about particle physics and the makeup in the universe through the Higgs boson how matter is created, how electromagnetics are created, the weak force, the strong force. We have more insight in that through string theory, more understanding about geology than we've ever had in the history of civilization. What makes us the most powerful, we're probably the most powerful civilization in our corner of the galaxy. And yet people are upset about what? Immigration? That's a problem? I don't know. I haven't noticed it. Honestly, I have not noticed it. I have not noticed that. It's hilarious. It's so weird. Yeah. So here I am. I'm living in a world where I have all my arms and legs and I'm healthy. And yet I can imagine there are times I feel sad about imagined losses, right? Well, life could have been this way, but should have been that way. I would have done this if it wasn't for that person. Blaming and judgment, right? And a lot of people spend a lot of time dwelling on this. I mean, myself included. I watch the nightly news, right? And it's just disaster after disaster. And it's so funny because things have never been better. I'm serious. Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for the people who are producing news programs today because I have a feeling that it's getting harder and harder to come up with material. Right? It's no, I say material that's substantive, right? Real problems. But you know what? Of course, with technology and communication and the internet, people can find areas of problem areas. Just like any apple farmer can find some problem apples here and there. But boy, overall, things are pretty darn good. I mean, think about it. Even on a national scale, there are, through the internet, states and countries are more connected than they've ever been before through flows of trade and through communications like telephone, cellular phone, video teleconferencing, email. We have, because to deal with problems related to languages, we've got access to computer programs which translate languages, one language to another, almost instantaneously. So those communication barriers are being broken down. We are closer knit than we ever have been before on a political level. And yet at the same time, there seems to be this odd division. But yet we're so similar. There's so many commonalities. I know. Isn't it interesting? I think the main problem is this. I think there might be a virtue in negativity. There are supposed virtues of negativity that people are acting in ways that they think is right? They're acting in ways that they think is correct. They want to be balanced, right? They want to balance the good with the bad. For them, it's about justice, equality. And so if they make two statements about what's good in the world, then they must say, on the other hand, here are two statements about what's bad in the world. So there's a value of balance, right? People are trying to, and I can respect that, but really what's happening now is just pure miraculousness and amazingness in the world. And to even mention some of the stuff that's supposedly bad, I don't know. It seems unrealistic. There's so many good things going on in the world. There's this virtue of negative thinking that exists. I mentioned it just a second ago about this whole idea about equality and um, a balance, and that's a virtue that also that tends to bring up negativity. There are other virtues too. People like to sometimes when we just had Martin Luther King Jr. Day happen in January, and a lot of people were focusing on racism and bringing up that subject, and it's important and appropriate. And I'm personally Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of my heroes, one of my personal heroes. I admire him very much. I've read many of his works, and I try to model my life after him. I admire his courage, and he's someone that I focus on. And so I really appreciate the recognition that they bring to him and his death and his life, because I am a personal and sincere admirer of him. And I've been celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. for years, certainly decades. And I also tend to think that racial discrimination and we're at a footing today that's better than we've ever been. Right? I tend to think that people are more equality focused than they've ever been before, ever. And for me, it's about celebration. And I recognize there's some problem areas, but things are so much better than they've ever been. And so my point is that in order to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I noticed that there were a lot of tributes that focused solely on some of the bad stuff that was going on. And that's great and appropriate. But I don't know. I think it might somewhat be exaggerated. Some of the problems. I know that they're serious, but I don't know. My point is that, here we are honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., taking his perspective, and I appreciate that. But I think, I don't know, I do think that things are better than they've ever been before. There's a lot of blackface controversy going on right now. And I'm so thankful that practice is largely eliminated. And, it's in such poor taste to do something like that anymore. And that's a wonderful thing. It's truly wonderful. And, like I said, I think it's really time to celebrate how far we've come and not feel so bad about it. So yeah, I think that people tend to think it's virtuous to focus on the negative. I know that, I know Donald Trump has suggested that, being tough is important. It's being tough, and, I actually have this kind of sense that life is actually rather easy. And, all you need to make changes is to make decisions. And, I search for the virtue of toughness, and I try to find out where it's coming from, because being tough has there's like a virtue about it. And I'm interested in exploring that virtue. And I'm kind of wondering what makes it tough. A lot of the most brave and courageous things that people do, they do so in a thoughtless way, or they do it thoughtfully, but it's like the courage of heroes, right? Firefighters, for example, they do a lot of training, and they're knowledgeable, expert in good physical condition, and they do their best to make things work out. It's just part of their job, right? It's their profession. It's what they do, and for them, it comes naturally because that's what they think about. That's how they operate in the world, and they are everyday heroes, of course. Um, I think most heroes are like that. They're continuously operating in ways that are virtuous, and for them, a kind smile, a handshake, honoring other people, appreciating other people, that kind of courage and heroism comes very naturally because they practice it every day. And so there's nothing tough about being courageous or brave or virtue. It's just is how virtues unfold over time. And I'm asking myself, okay, what's this virtue of being tough? Are firefighters tough? Well, I don't know. They've got endurance, because they practice. I'm not sure it's tough. Not after it's maybe if you've done it for the first time, it's tough. But these are people who practice virtue every day, all day, right? And in fact, a lot of people, in order to stay alive, human beings have to practice virtue all day, every day. I've got to make my bed every morning and take a shower every morning. There are virtues I have to practice. I have to eat food in a sanitary and hygienic kitchen, and that means I have to clean it. And, I've got to there's a virtue behind cleanliness. So my point is that I'm not sure where this virtue of being tough comes from. Now, there are people who are strong, and they're strong because they go to the gym or because they work regularly and they're energetic in their outlook. It's just something that comes natural to them. After lots of practice, they're practicing virtues on a daily basis. So I'm still trying to figure out what the virtue of toughness is. It's about resilience, apparently. It's not about hurting people. It's about resilience and offering value to others all the time. That's what being tough is. And there's nothing hard about it. It's about being thoughtful. It's about being creative, right? It's about being productive. It's about being generous. Yeah. Is it tough to be generous? It's so tough to be so kind. It's so tough to maximize the good in the world. Boy, that's really tough. I'm trying to figure out, and I'm using tough with this connotation that it's difficult or challenging or hard or makes you feel bad. Like, being this generous makes me feel terrible. I'm trying to find the negative connotation in toughness. I'm trying to sort of figure out where the virtue, what is the virtue of toughness? And what does that really mean? What are we really asking a person? How are we really asking a person to act if we want them to act tough in a good way, to be good and tough? Really it's just about, anyways, as you can tell, I'm questioning this idea of the necessity of pain to get something good accomplished. I know that there are people who like to have these honest conversations, right? Critical conversations, crucial conversations, right? Dangerous conversations, right? And, I can see it, sometimes I can imagine how you got to consider some bad stuff in order to make good things happen, right? Got to crack a few eggs in order to make an omelet or something like that, right? But I think it might be exaggerated and overblown, this idea about how it's important to be critical. And that is what I mean by that is negative in order to accomplish something good, right? Like punishment is a good example, right? You know, I think punishment has some utility, but I think scientific studies have discovered that really punishment is not that effective long term, right? It may solve a problem short term, but it ends up causing a lot of other problems, a lot of different problems in the long term. Like you can tell your mate to shut up or something like that. That's a phrase I would never use. But you could tell your mate to do that, and they might do so, say for 5 or 10 minutes. But that punishment, so to speak, has long-term negative consequences, and I'm pretty sure you'll pay for it in the end. If you're the one making the request for the other one to stay silent, um, in those powerful, with using that powerfully negative language, that powerfully negative tone, I have a feeling that it'll backfire real quick. Punishment tends to backfire. Guidance, on the other hand, education, on the other hand, doesn't backfire. In fact, it heaps good upon good. So I'm actually no advocate of punishment. I think it creates a lot more problems than it solves. And so anyway, this is part of a larger conversation I'm trying to have with you, Em. And that is that what's happening in our just our cultural conversation, and even in our internal dialogue quite often, is a focus on lack in the midst of plenty, a focus on lack in the midst of abundance. And it's actually somewhat mystifying to me. I know it's kind of funny. Here I am, I'm enjoying my life. I've got a healthy body. I've got a hand that is functional and provides me wonderful services all throughout the day. This hand how much is it worth to me? Is it worth $1 million? Yeah, it's worth $1 million. If I had a choice between keeping my hand or keeping $1 million, I would keep my hand. This hand is amazingly useful, and I love to have it. And yet at the same time, I do entertain thoughts of me not having enough money. How is that possible? When I have things more valuable than money, right? The very next breath that I take, how much, in fact, that's actually a really good comparison. What if somebody paid me, would I accept $1 billion in exchange for not taking another breath? That's a good question. Let me think. Would I accept $1 billion in exchange for me agreeing not to take another breath? No. No. Why? Because my life is worth more than $1 billion. What? My life? Yes, it's worth more than $1 billion. Miguel, are you telling me? I'm speaking in third person for emphasis. So there's a reason behind it. So the reason is I'm emphasizing this idea that my life is worth more than $1 billion. How about $1 trillion? Would I receive an offer of $1 trillion in exchange for not taking another breath? No, I wouldn't. I would decide to take another breath despite the offer. Why is that? Because my life is worth more than $1 trillion to me. So there's so much value. I mean, basically, I'm a walking treasure chest. And that treasure chest exists because I can take the next breath, and I move around healthily on the planet, and I'm strong, intelligent, creative, resourceful. I've got enough. There's just so much I've got. I mean, I've got an amazing child, an amazing daughter who's breathtaking in so many ways. And I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more than that, because things are wonderful. I know they are truly wonderful. I live in a world where I can listen to any music anytime I want. I can practice leisure. There's so much leisure time in my life. I can practice this. I can practice recreation, recreate anytime, pretty much anywhere on the planet that I want to. I mean, if I chose to go on a ski vacation in Switzerland this weekend, I could totally do it. I could totally do it. I could totally do it. Um, that's on the other side of the planet. I know. It's amazing. You know, our life is amazing, and sometimes I struggle to understand how we've come to this point where we focus so much on the negative. Anyway, let's move on. I guess I've made my point. Let's move on to the question and answer period in this video. I will be discussing some questions in my ebook. And one of the first questions I'll be discussing is this one, number 247. Of all the tools and gadgets you own, which one do you most enjoy using? So right now, I am really enjoying my iPad Pro. I'm loving this tablet computer. It's just being transformative. It's transforming the way I work. It's transforming the way I play. It's really ingenious, and I'm loving using the pencil attachment, and I'm enjoying using the keyboard cover on my iPad Pro, and there's just so many things to learn. I'm learning about the Apple ecosystem and how to survive and thrive in that. And yeah, things are really good. And it makes me curious, Emily, about what kind of computer you have in your room. What computer have you got? Do you have like I'm guessing you have like an iMac or something like that. I'm curious what kind of computer you got. Hopefully you don't have an old PC like the old PC that I had when we were together. Hopefully we've upgraded your technology. I recognize you're going to high school now, and I think it's important for you to have the computing power that you need to do well. And I don't know, I'd be open to getting you a tablet computer, an iPad Pro, to helping you maximize your potential while you're in school, in high school. And anyway, we can think about that. We can talk about that. I would be totally open to helping you acquire a tablet computer. Let's see, what else? Any other gadgets that I'm enjoying? Well, I'm enjoying my smartphone. I'm enjoying the Kindle app. I'm reading a lot of books these days. And in fact, I just started a book a couple of days ago about appreciative inquiry, AI. And I'm really loving that perspective. It's helping me figure out how to produce more appreciative conversations worth having, and helping me understand my own internal dialogue and characterize it. And it's helping me improve my conversations with others, not only myself, but my conversations with others too. And so I'm really enjoying learning about appreciative inquiry. I think it's a movement that makes sense and is important in today's world. And I think what'll happen is that I will, when I'm done with the book, I'm highlighting some key points in that book right now, and I hope to bring it to us in the future, and we can go over the book and go through some interesting parts of it, right, that I appreciated, and we can discuss them. See, what other gadgets do I own that I'm mostly enjoying using? Well, on the iPad Pro, I am experimenting with a lot of creative apps that help me write to-do lists and do note taking and help me be more productive. And I've also started dabbling with an app that allows me to do creative artwork using the pencil attachment. And so it's allowing me to make drawings and make videos while I'm drawing, so I can post those videos on YouTube. And the Apple app is called Procreate, and I'm using it to do some drawings, and I want to share those drawings with you. And I'm just sort of experimenting with the program right now. It's highly technical, and I'm finding that there's a lot to learn in order to even draw rudimentary drawings. And so, I'm developing my skill using that program, and maybe together we can work on some artwork and share it through text messages. And maybe I can draw a picture, and then you can make adjustments to that picture, and then you can send it to me, and I'll make some more adjustments to the picture, and then we can have this like creative, artistic collaboration together. That sounds really amazing to me. I'd love to do something like that. All right, what other gadgets? Oh, another gadget is just really a thought about the Pomodoro technique. I'm using to-do lists and calendaring, and I'm coming together, maybe coming up with a digital planner, which is amazing. And so I've got this idea of doing the Pomodoro technique. I'm basically timing myself, doing activities, focusing 100% on a certain project for say 20 minutes, and doing that during the day, 4 or 5 times during the day. And it's really having a transformative effect on my productivity. So thankful that I've been able to find the Pomodoro technique. And I've known about the Pomodoro technique for years, 6-7 years maybe, but I've always struggled to implement it. And I just have failed really to use it to its full potential. And only now is it really starting to come into its own for me. I'm really sort of understanding how I can use the Pomodoro technique to gamify my life. I do all kinds of things during the day. I can drive, I take showers, I brush my teeth. I'm finding that if I measure these activities with a timer or a clock, that I can gamify them, in the sense that just by measuring an activity, let's say how long it takes me to eat breakfast, well, I can optimize that. I can try to have as much fun as I can and say the 20 minutes it takes me to eat. I could try to reduce the length of my meals. I could try to, there are certain aspects of my meal that I can optimize. And it's by sort of capturing it and bookmarking it, or I should say a parenthesis, putting it in brackets, right? When I put an activity in brackets, I can optimize that activity. And one way to put it in brackets is to put it on the schedule. It's to put it on my calendar. It's to time it, its duration. I can measure certain things about it. I could make subjective estimates about my levels of enjoyment. So it's bracketing. When you bracket an activity, the next step is to gamify it. It's a way to gamify the activity, make it better, make it more awesome. And that's a lot better than just doing whatever, whenever, right? And there's no game associated with doing whatever, whenever. You just do what you do, and it's very thoughtless. But if you gamify it, if you bracket it, then you can manipulate it and improve it and come up with strategies and plans for improvement. And with measurement, you can make it into a game. I mean, because you focus. It gives you focus. Like, yeah. So I'm really appreciating this gamifying life through using Pomodoro technique and calendaring and journaling. And so I'm sort of gamifying my life. And so I'm trying to optimize certain aspects of it. And it's working. And it's been a long time in coming. I'm so glad I'm able to do that. And so these are amazing things that are going on in my life right now. I know. There's like this whirlwind of change that's happening, and I'm loving it. All right, let's go to the next question. The next question is question number 248. What is one of your favorite souvenirs brought back from your travels, and where do you keep it? Well, souvenirs from my travels. Okay, I can't think of any. If I have souvenirs from my travels, they're my photography. And I have photography in a lot of different places, on computers, on Google Photos, on CD-ROMs, on DVDs, on external hard drives. So that's where I keep all the stuff from my travels. So again, what is one of your favorite souvenirs brought back from your travels, and where do you keep it? So there's one souvenir I have, and it's not so much a souvenir like a physical object, but last time I went to Hawaii, I came back with an appreciation of Hawaiian music. And that's something I focus on every once in a while. I really like Hawaiian music. I think it's really enjoyable and light. The ukulele is a beautiful instrument, simple and happiness producing, and is a joyful music. And so that's a souvenir. For me, that's a souvenir. It's essentially a learning, an appreciation. And for me, that's my kind of souvenir. That's the best kind of souvenir, if you ask me. All right. Let's see what else. What's the next question? Question number 249. What's your choice? Baseball, football, frisbee, hacky sack, or boomerang? Well, my choice would not be baseball or football. Although I've enjoyed playing baseball in the past, football I've enjoyed much, much more because it's a lot more participatory. I especially like playing flag football or touch football, especially when I was a kid. When I was in middle school and high school. Frisbee, there we go. I think that's it. I like frisbee because it's a relatively simple game and you can play it with anybody, and it's not too hard. Hacky sack, I like hacky sack, but hacky sack is kind of challenging. And boomerang, man, I haven't used a boomerang in a long, 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 long time. And but hacky sack and frisbee, that's stuff that I can do. And the thing about hacky sack is that, if you're not highly skilled, those volleys with yourself just don't go very far. And you end up picking up the hacky sack a lot. But a frisbee is fun. It's a very fun. So I'm going to say frisbee. I play frisbee on a fairly regular basis, I guess. I played frisbee last August with a lot of people. I was like in a frisbee throwing game with like 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 other people. Yeah, young people. When I went camping last September, and had a really good time. Frisbee is great. Oh, I've also played frisbee at the park with friends. Frisbee is just such an awesome game. It's fun and active, and yet it's not too active. You can play it still when you're feeling tired or injured or something like that, and still get in an enjoyable game of frisbee. And it's just fun. It's fun to toss the frisbee around. All right, what's the next question? Question number 250. What are the best and worst sounds in the world? The best and worst sounds in the world. The best sounds. Well, I'll tell you what for me are some of the best sounds in the world, and that is I like my music choices. I've got some music that I enjoy listening to that is sort of like borders between pop and techno and EDM, and some of the melodies in that music are really inspiring, and I love to work out and listen to that music. So music, I would guess. Now, as for the worst sounds in the world, to me, that would be the sound of suffering. Like I remember being really challenged at the grocery store the other day. I think I was at a Walmart or something, and this small baby was crying, and it was just torturing me on the inside. I wanted to run to the rescue to that child, and I just realized there was nothing I could do. And I mean, the child had its parents nearby, and those parents were doing the best they could to remedy the situation, whatever the situation was. But let me tell you, when a child cries, my heart it suffers. There's a lot of heartache. I want to alleviate the suffering of the child. So yeah, a baby crying or a child crying, any kind of child crying just really moves me. And it's one of the worst sounds in the world. I want to act to resolve the problem ASAP. Okay, question number 251. When you go to a movie, do you like to sit in the back, the middle, or the front, and why? Well, I've sat in the back, middle, and front in a lot of movies. I think I just like to sit in the middle. Sometimes I'll sit in the back, though. So I have sat in the very front, and here's the problem with the front for me. The problem is that I'm looking up all the time, and it's kind of rough on my neck for 2 hours, tilting my neck like that. And so really, I tend not to go into the very front for that reason, because it's not good for the posture. I've got to sink down in my chair or something in order to see it. It's just rough on the ergonomics of the situation just aren't excellent. Normally, I like to sit kind of in the middle, right? In the middle of the aisle. In the middle of the seating rows. And sort of smack dab right in the middle. That's fine for me. To me, that would be like the ideal viewing spot for a movie. Now, I sometimes do not choose to go to sit front and center or to sit in the center for a few reasons. Like if I know the movie's going to be really loud, then I'll probably sit in the back. Or if I know if the movie's going to be particularly intense, like a lot of violent or action, I might sit in the back on purpose so as to give myself a little distance from the screen. If I knew it's going to be a particularly intense movie, I'll sit toward the back, maybe in the corner or something like that. Yeah. So I actually do make choices about where to sit depending on what movie I'm going to. If it's like a Disney movie, I'll be in the center because I'll want to enjoy it to the fullest. But if it's going to be like an action thriller or a horror film or anything like that, I'll probably sit in the back. And if I know it's going to be really loud or something like that, I'll sit in the back a little bit. For some reason, I don't know, that gives me a little bit more distance. All right, next question. Question number 252. Where's your favorite spot from which to view the sunrise or sunset? Okay. Well, outside, anywhere outside. My favorite spot? Well, here's the thing. In my home, there is no spot in particular that I can see the sunset or sunrise from. So, I like to see sunsets from the ocean, like from the beach. So I think that's a good place, the beach. Sunrises and sunsets are beautiful on mountaintops or on hills when you're out in the wilderness. Um, those are my favorite spots to see sunrises or sunsets because you get a clear view, right? That's the same thing with the beach or the ocean. You get a clear view. It just occurred to me that there are some places in the world where if you see the sun in the mornings, you'll see it over water, and you'll never see the sun over water in the evenings. I just realized that. Like most of the time that I'm looking at the sun over water, it's at sunset. And it is very rare for me to look at a sunrise over water because I'm in California. That's kind of interesting to me. I very rarely see a sunrise over water. Mostly it's a sunset. Anyway, next question. Question number 253. What's your most and least preferred forms of exercise, and explain? So my most preferred form of exercise for me are like solo exercises that I can do at a gym. For example, running on the treadmill, riding a stationary bike. For me, what I've been appreciating and enjoying lately is using Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder. It's essentially a ladder mill. Just like there's a stair mill or a tread mill, there's a ladder mill. And Jacob's ladder is a ladder mill. And I really enjoy that. Those are my favorite kinds of exercise. Maybe even just walking around town. That's a favorite exercise for me. Other kinds of exercises I don't like. Here's the kind. I don't like, I used to love like group exercises, like playing volleyball or playing basketball or baseball. And I do at times in moderation. Those are fun and exciting games to play, and I'll certainly play them. But they're not my most fun. The problem with the games like that, where you're playing with a lot of other people, is that other people they have different skill levels. They get wrapped up in the game in some ways. And so the threat of injury is actually quite high. Most of my injuries I've ever had in sports have been in group sports, like basketball, football, baseball injuries. I had a volleyball injury that is only now getting healed after about a year. Is it becoming super healed? I jammed my finger. Well, actually, I didn't jam it. Someone threw a ball at me, and it bounced off my finger, injuring it in the process. And that kind of activity is normal, right? You get people acting, I don't know, less than responsibly on the court, and it's all in the spirit of fun, all in the spirit of play, and there's risk when you're playing with other people. I had a friend, he played some basketball with his friends, and he had the basketball and he was going to do a jump shot, and just before he jumped up, he had a friend who was trying to block him. And to block him, he stepped up and toward him. And when he did that, he stepped on his toe. Normally, just made a misstep, stepped on his toe. But my friend was in the middle of beginning to jump for a jump shot. So he jumps up, but his toe doesn't go anywhere. And so he then falls weird and he breaks his ACL, right? He snaps his ACL in his knee. He snaps it for the third time. And then he's like entertaining whether he needs to get surgery or something like that, his ACL surgery. So things like that are like unintentional quite often. He was injured unintentionally, but that's just part of the game when it comes to team sports. You sort of have to watch out not only for the ball, but for your other players. I mean, I've played racquetball when I've run into other people in the racquetball court, or slammed up against the wall. Um, it's just really easy in a team sports scenario to get injured. And here's another thing. It's also really easy to exert yourself in ways that maybe you didn't plan on doing. Like I remember I was part of a group bicycling. What do they call that? Stationary cycling, indoor stationary cycling. And, I enjoy having a coach to give me guidance, but sometimes when that guidance is coupled with peer pressure, I feel a little uncomfortable. And, sometimes I'll push myself too hard in those situations. I think that it can be good to get a read on how you compare to other, say, bicyclists who are in the same class. So I can see how useful it is, but I don't know. It's a kind of exercise that I don't care to spend a lot of time in. These group coached exercises. All right, what is next? Question number 254. Growing up, what was your favorite fairy tale or children's story and why? So one of my favorite fairy tales was Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and Brer Fox. It was old Uncle Remus stories. And the reason why mostly is because my grandmother would read to me these stories in her rocking chair. And I would sit on her lap and she'd read me these stories when I was a boy. And I loved it. I fell in love with being in my grandma's lap and reading those books. And so that story is my favorite from my childhood. I also like all the Christmas stories and the Christmas cartoons, like Charlie Brown Christmas and things like that. Anyway, I'm going to start wrapping things up. I've got to get going. But thank you for spending some time with me and learning a little bit about me, being present, and sort of acknowledging my ideas about the world. And hopefully you're able to get some keener insight into who I am and also what I'm thinking about, what's on my mind. And hopefully this is helpful to you. I know it's helpful to me. And I wish you a fantastic day today. I sent you a Valentine's Day card, and I hope I'm guessing that you'll be receiving it today or tomorrow. And I wish you a wonderful weekend. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing this weekend, but it's slowly beginning to form in my mind. I hope you have a fabulous weekend and a great day, a great rest of the week at school. And I'll talk to you later. I love you, girl. Peace.